Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conrad, and this show is where we hear the real stories from real people changing the world. From everyday people to the top celebrities, all the conversations are real, raw, and always unscripted. Thank you for joining me today. Now let's get to today's guest. All right, everybody, welcome to Unscripted One-on-One from my still unnamed, unsponsored studios here in Columbus, Ohio. And I know my guests will appreciate that. And actually, I want to touch on something in a second. But let me let my guest go ahead and introduce himself, and we will go from there.
Hello, I am Aaron Conrad. I'm the host of the Unscripted pod. Wait, no? Oh, no, that's you. Okay.
That's me.
I am Joey Powell, and I am thrilled to be here on the Unscripted podcast with Aaron. I live in Durham, North Carolina. I'm a father of two great kids and husband to a phenomenal lady. I run the 501c3 called the Me Fine Foundation. They're headquartered here out of the Triangle area of North Carolina. I graduated from UNC in 2001. Have a couple of side projects that are heavily Tar Heel influenced, and those are really fun. Just things that I've been lucky enough to been able to turn those into a side gig. But yeah, man, just loving the opportunity to live a kind of purpose-driven life, and getting a chance to have conversations like this.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's funny. Well, first let me put a pin in everything else. And I gotta say, I know I watched your podcast, of course, and I know one of your sponsors is Johnny T-Shirt. And so I just want to say, if Johnny T-Shirt ever wants to sponsor this little podcast in Columbus, Ohio, I know a guy. And you know a guy now.
Work it.
Johnny, I've given Johnny T-Shirt enough money, including the hat that I'm wearing, that and my wife every year, they have my wife on speed dial every year at Christmas. Because
from what I've learned, you kind of stop there on the way to your OBX trip just about every year, right?
Every year, man. We haven't been to OBX in a few years, but no, it's a part of the tour. We stay overnight in Chapel Hill. We hit up Sutton's, we hit up Johnny T-Shirt, we hit up Franklin Street, and yeah, we've spent many a dime. So I'm thinking, Johnny T-Shirt could maybe throw me a bone here in Columbus, Ohio. I can't promise a lot because we are in the. I mean, the ROI for Johnny T-Shirt in Columbus, Ohio is probably not really good. And I'm probably losing any chance of a sponsorship now.
Their target audience is like 3 people. It's you and whoever you happen to be talking to that day, right?
That's right. So anyway, Johnny T-Shirt, love them. Glad they're a sponsor of yours. Great little business down there in Franklin Town or Franklin Street. And we love Chapel Hill. We really do. So,
man, look, small world. When I actually took my visit to UNC, that was the first store on Franklin Street I went into.
Yep.
And it just blew my, I came from Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is very much like southern, medium-sized town built around a gigantic military base. But I'd never been to any place that was like a quaint little, shop like that. I'd never spent any time on a college campus. So yeah, man, I'm like you. I got a personal tie to that place.
Love it. Love that place. And by the looks of the walls behind you, you've probably spent a few dollars on there too.
I'd love to say that all the stuff behind me was given to me because of my awesomeness and just general decency as a human being, but you'd be closer to the right than I would be.
There you go. All right. Well, and this isn't my Carolina man cave. That's upstairs. I've had to move to the basement because I have a dog that barks. So here we are. But anyway, all right. So we're glad to have you on. We had our buddy Rel on, and as soon as Rel was on, I knew I had to have you on. And it's funny how the Twitter world works because I know you because of Twitter. And so maybe let's start there. And so. And again, there's an unscripted, underwritten rule that if I ever ask you a question, you don't want to answer it or can't answer it, you just say pass. Okay.
Yeah.
So is it true that you took time off of Twitter? Because you were one of my son and my son is 20 now. And we have, ever since we've been on Twitter, I think he was on Twitter when he was about 9 years old.
That blows my mind.
But we followed, and one of my favorite things used to be when you would get into really good Twitter wars with the opposing fan bases, and then one day you just disappeared for a while. So did you just take a break from Twitter, or what happened?
So, one of the things you've probably figured out about me or will learn over the course of this episode today is I do everything I do with a whole lot of passion.
Yep.
And I don't hide that. I think that that authenticity has served me really well. I think it's allowed me to get more out of life and, my time on this planet. And so when I have conversations with people, whether they're digital or, virtual or whatever, I'm all in, right? Like I'm
Yep.
all in for that conversation. And I'm pretty off the cuff. Like I'm going to tell you what I think, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad, and sometimes people want to hear it, sometimes they don't, and that's just kind of how I operate. And one of the things that I struggle with was just the political side of Twitter. Um, I would get pretty fired up by a lot of that stuff, and it just wasn't serving me. Right about the time the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings were happening, and I'm not going to take this episode political on you, but
Sure.
it was time for me to step away.
Yeah.
It was causing me too much strife. I was wrestling with, I don't know, it was making me not a happy person. And I missed that interaction because like you said, I loved interacting with Tar Heel fans. I love the fan baiting.
Mhm.
I love trolling. I love the memes that come from Twitter.
Right.
Um and I had to drop it cold turkey, man. It was not it was not the ROI, to use one of your earlier terms from the show, was just not what I needed it to be.
Yeah.
Not for a father of two kids and a guy running a nonprofit. It was more struggle than it was worth. And
Yeah.
when you run a small nonprofit, when you disappear from social media, and people had kind of identified me a little bit with that, you lose a little of that voice too. Yeah, I mean, I don't make any bones about it. I'm not anybody important. I'm not special. I'm not famous. None of that. But I have actually been able to help our organization just by communicating with people, and
Sure.
whether they agree with what I say or not, I'd like to think that people at least hopefully can appreciate that I am honest and pretty forthright. So when you take that time away from Twitter, you lose a little bit of the microphone to talk about what the
Right.
organization does. So that sucked a little bit, but again, I still think the net gain was better for me mentally. Just kind of step away for a little bit, and I've dipped my toe back in the waters the last little while. It's kind of like
Yeah.
you pick your head up and look to see if now that the house is falling on the wicked witch, can you see what else is going on in the world? Is it okay to come out? And
Right.
and Glenda's over there saying, "All right, yeah, it's okay." So I'm the munchkin with the really twirly mustache and the green hat that comes out and realizes it's all right now. So I'm not going to go full bore back into it, but I do miss I mean, I'm a people person, so
Yeah.
I miss the engagement. I miss this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I miss that a little bit, but just trying to pick my spots and find a happy medium.
Well, and I would say too that for us, when you stepped away, it was noticeable, for me. And I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't even know how many followers you have. I don't know how many I have. I don't. I'm not that guy. I just like Twitter, and for me, a guy living in Buckeye country, in the heart of Buckeye
Yeah,
country, I've done my best to trim my feed down to some friends that are Buckeye fans, but mostly Tar Heel fans, which is all
yeah,
about Twitter.
yeah.
You can create your own audience, and it was noticeable when you were gone, and then when you came back, I've noticed a kindler, gentler JP. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems like it's just much more Tar Heel based and not as much baiting. And I don't care either way. I mean,
Yeah.
each person, like every person's Twitter. But what I always say is, and we've been on for 10 minutes. What I always say is, what I want to when I meet somebody that I've followed on Twitter, met on Twitter,
Hmm.
when I meet them in real life, like we are right now, I want to know that you're the guy that you say you are on social media, because there's a lot of people that act like they're not,
Right.
and in the 10 minutes that we've been on so far, I haven't seen anything other than what I always see on there, which is good. It's a good thing.
It was
That's a
probably my
compliment.
problem, right? Like again, like couching it in the fact that I'm pretty I wear my emotions on my sleeve and I'm pretty
Right.
easy to read. And the fact that I do go from 0 to 60 pretty quickly, and I've
Right.
mellowed in my age, but yeah, that was probably a negative for me, was the
Yeah.
fact that I did jump into any conversations like, okay, we're gonna go there. All right, let's go.
You're right. Right. I won't. So this is an unscripted first, and actually, I've never revealed this to the world.
Nice.
I once had a burner account called Dean's Dome, the Dean's Dome, or
Oh
Dean's
wow.
Dome, and it wasn't the Dean Dome; it was Dean's Dome.
Right.
And the profile picture was a picture of Michael Jordan kissing Dean Smith on the head. And I once got in a really bad Twitter war with, is it Scott Wood? Is that the guy that played for North Carolina that
Play
was
for
a great
state.
shooter? NC
Yeah, played
State.
for
Yeah.
state. Yeah, he was a bit of a talker. Yeah,
So yeah,
really good shooter though. Yeah, really good shooter.
so we got in a really big fight on Twitter one time, and I made fun of him because his Twitter profile picture was him holding a cat. So,
And so the joke writes itself.
that's when I knew it was time to step away. And so
Yeah.
if you search, maybe somebody else owns that now. I don't have it anymore, but it was crazy. That thing blew up on me a little bit. But anyway, so I didn't really want to go down a Twitter rabbit hole, but you were missed. I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad to
Thanks,
have
man.
you on today. I really am. So let's should we I know as soon as we start talking Carolina hoops, anybody listening is going to turn their car off in the neighborhood I live in.
All
So,
right.
but the other fans from Twitter that know maybe you or I or both
Hell,
are going to
Carolina
appreciate.
fans might turn their car off right now. Like, it's the way the season's not hasn't improved the way folks wanted to. Maybe they'll turn their own cars off.
Right, right. Let's start with the most important thing, and then we'll talk hoops at the end, because that's I want people to hear this before we get off. So if anybody's still listening
Yeah.
in Buckeye Land, please keep listening, because there's something very important that I want you to talk about, and that is Me Fine.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Me Fine. Tell me about it. Tell me how you got connected with it, and let's really talk about Me Fine.
Um, I always try to tell this story, and I know it doesn't sound like I'm polished when I open the sentence with
Hey, it's
but
unscripted.
there we go. I'm just playing to the brand, baby.
There you go,
Uh,
baby.
when I when I was about, I'm having to do some math here, and I was told that there would be no math. Um, when I was probably 31 or 32, you kind of hit that age where I think men normally hit that age around their 30s. Women probably hit it in their mid 20s, but you start trying to make meaning out of everything.
Mhm.
It just so happened to be around the time that I'd gotten married, had my first kid, and was just really trying to sort out like what is my epitaph going to read if I get hit by a bus tomorrow,
Right.
right? And I realize the morbidity that comes with that. I recognize it's a very macabre way to look at things, but it's just how I thought. And I think a lot of people come to grips with their own mortality when they bring another child into the world. And so I
Absolutely.
was I was thinking about, like, what are they going to tell my kid about me if I'm gone tomorrow? Because none of us have a guaranteed, other than we have a guaranteed end date.
Right.
And so I kind of started evaluating things, and I had been working for sports radio, the ESPN affiliate here in the Triangle, for a while. Really loved it. Was good at it. Wasn't on the air, but did a lot of marketing and sales and stuff for them, and really enjoyed it. Made great money. Um, but I was unfulfilled. Right. I wasn't giving the most, nor did I think that the world was getting the most of what I'm intended to be while I'm here. And I had been involved in a lot of different nonprofits. I'd done the boys and girls clubs. I'd been a big brother. Um, had been a house volunteer at our local Ronald McDonald House in Chapel Hill for a long time. I just, I was a youth basketball coach for like 7 or 8 years. Loved that,
Mhm.
but I had never really gotten involved in anything incredibly deeply. So then I started getting on a couple of boards. And still was really unfulfilled with all the other stuff I was doing, with, kind of, when you looked at who I was as a whole. And I had this idea to start my own nonprofit, which, if anybody listening is thinking about doing that, I would strongly recommend against it. Go find somebody that's doing what you want to do. Don't duplicate efforts. Don't thin out the resources. Go find somebody that's doing what you want to do. Get fired up about it and go all in.
Yeah.
Um, but when I was doing the research about kind of starting my own thing, I recognized that it wasn't really feasible for me to pull it off. Like, what I wanted to do was too big in scope. It was too deep, and it was something there was no way I was going to be able to afford to have my career and go do this part time. So I kind of let that go. And about 2 years later, a friend of mine at the time, who was Me Fine's advisory board chair, heard about this idea through a mutual friend. Come my idea for a nonprofit, and said, "Do you want to come do this under our umbrella?" I was like, "Okay, sure. What the hell? Try it out." And I did, and it worked out, and turned out to be something easy that MeFine could do with their mo. And at that point, she reached out and said, "Look, we're looking to hire a full time executive director." First time we would have been paid anybody to be a full time paid ED. Would you be interested? And I knew they were dealing with some founder syndrome. The organization was founded by a lady named Lori Lee, and she founded MeFine, which is mefinefoundation.org, MEFINE foundation.org. Um, she founded the organization when her son was diagnosed with AML leukemia at a very, very young age. Uh, Childhood disease does not discriminate.
Right.
Lori had a great family, um, you know, dual income. Her husband was a very, very, um, very successful in his career. She was very successful, but that just kind of made things stop on a dime. And while she was going through the various treatments and stuff over his short life, she realized that a lot of families who were dealing with the same thing were watching their lives unravel around them because they could not maintain any sense of stability while their child was facing whatever treatment or disease that the child was facing. And she wasn't okay with that.
Hmm.
She felt like, her calling was there needs to be more done about this.
Yeah.
Specifically, it was around making sure families weren't being evicted because they couldn't pay their rent while their kid was being treated for cancer.
Yeah.
Families who have a kid with a chronic condition, uh, and they can't discharge the kid from a hospital admission because they don't have working utilities at the home. She wasn't cool with that, decided to start Me Fine, and literally it was like her calling her circle of friends in a small town in North Carolina to see if anyone would give some money to help keep a family from being evicted. And that's how it starts. Like it's
Wow.
just she had a thing that she wanted to do. She was driven, and she made it happen. And when her son passed, Mephine became his legacy.
Hmm.
The name Mephine came because inevitably, regardless of what he was dealing with, whether it was, major transfusion, you know, uh, you know, long time isolation in a hospital unit, whatever. Whenever he was asked in the morning, "How you doing today, buddy?" He'd always say, "Me fine."
Hmm.
And that stuck, right? People always
Hmm.
hear our name and they're like, what does it mean? Like,
Right.
am I not pronouncing it right? Is the syntax or the grammar isn't correct?
Right. Right.
But then when I tell that story, they never forget.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
So
Absolutely.
about that time, Lori had kind of gotten me fine to the place that she didn't feel like she could do much more for it than what she had done. Not because of a limitation of skill or a limitation of time, but just the way organizations grow. It's not any different from an entrepreneur when they hatch something, they give it everything they've got. At some point, they burn out
Hmm.
or the organization outgrows them, and that's kind
Yep.
of where MeFund was. We were at a place where she wanted it to thrive and survive, and she knew that it was probably going to need to be run by someone else. And I just happened to be lucky enough to be on the advisory board at that point in time. So I was looking for more meaning out of my life. This is right around Christmas of 2012, and the board chair said, "Hey, do you want to come do this?" And I was like, what the hell, right? Made the leap. It took a leap of faith. It took a lot of soul searching, but once I decided to do it, I've never second guessed it for a bit.
Awesome.
Um, I mean, I'm that was like I said, that was start of 2013. We're going into I guess year 9 now. We just finished
Yeah.
up or wrapping up 8, entering in 9. And at some point, if I'm doing my job well, the organization will outgrow me. I have no hesitation about saying that. If I do my job well enough, then I'll need to do the same thing that Lori did and hand it off to somebody else. But what we do is we provide financial assistance and emotional support programs to families that have a child facing a medical crisis at our partner hospitals. Our partner hospitals are Duke Children's, which is a very world-renowned research hospital. They um, treat the most rare of rare conditions, orphan type diseases, those kinds of things. We partner with the North Carolina Children's Hospital in Chapel Hill. That one is the state hospital of North Carolina. That is where most of the specialties or where there's more wraparound care for specialties at the North Carolina Children's Hospital than anywhere else in the state. And again, they are public. And then we also just 2 years ago added a partnership with Wake Med Children's Hospital, which is in Raleigh, which is the state capital. It's more of a regional hospital and a community hospital in the sense that it's located in a part of Raleigh that is probably economically depressed. It's a very diverse community, but is in every sense of the word a community hospital. They see a lot more trauma as
Right.
opposed to long-term care or chronic conditions or even terminal diseases. But just because they're not dealing with long-term disease doesn't mean that they don't suffer the same sort. Those families don't suffer the same situations that a family with, cystic fibrosis or, hypoplastic left heart syndrome or something like that deals with.
Right.
So our goal is to lessen the burdens that parents and caregivers face after their child has received a diagnosis. Whether
Wow.
that's a kid in an ATV accident that's going to be in the hospital for 3 weeks and the parents can afford parking, or whether that's, a family that I'll tell you the story. And this is one that if you're listeners, and I get the sense that I know you're a man of faith, and I know a lot of your listeners are, and some of your past guests have been as well. Um, if you can imagine, we had a family one time that had a 5-year-old little girl. She had gone through cancer treatment, long odds, really long odds, and she'd beaten it and had been in remission for better part of 2 years. Just kind of really like was just shocked. Like all of the oncologists were just really just amazed at how well she'd responded, and that she was, off and running to be a regular 5-year-old little girl. Um, During that time, the dad had also kind of been dealing with some chronic issues, nothing like major, but it was rough and it was hard for him to maintain a regular job. But anyway, everything was great. They had kind of paid down a lot of the medical debt that they had from the little girl. And she has a recurrence of the cancer that she had. And uh, it came and it took her really quickly. And the family, once she passed, the family was in such dire financial straits that they could not afford to claim her body from the hospital morgue. And I don't share that just for the sake of impact. I share that because that is the reality of the world in which we live.
Right.
And that is the reality of kind of some byproducts of a system that's pretty jacked. And I'm not blaming anybody for it,
Sure.
but that's the reality of what some of our brothers and sisters and our neighbors have to deal with.
Yeah.
Or a funeral for that child so that their family could properly send her home and say their goodbyes.
Mm.
And I told you that when I was going through that phase of my life, like just trying to find out more meaning. A story like that is what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Absolutely.
I'll never
Right.
meet that family. I never
Right.
did meet that family, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But I know that when I get out of bed in the morning, regardless of how mundane it is to the operation of this organization, we're making a difference in the lives of somebody.
Right.
And that's powerful, man. And
Absolutely.
I do not for a second um trivialize how lucky and blessed and fortunate I am to have that opportunity. I wish everybody had a chance to have that kind of meaningful life and have an opportunity to make the impact like we're making.
Yeah.
I I say often, that whatever my next step in my career is going to be is going to be tough for me to leave because I get fulfilled so much from the work that we do.
Right.
Um, I took a huge pay cut when I first came to MeFine
I'm sure.
because
Yeah.
I believed, and nobody comes to the nonprofit sector to get paid, right?
Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
I, but I believed so much in the work
Yeah.
and felt so called, right? Felt so moved about what we did that it was a no brainer. And if I could tell a personal story here,
Sure. Absolutely.
I guess it's all been personal, so what the hell?
Yeah.
Um, I was on my first 2 weeks with MeFine. I was going around with the person that was our program ambassador at the time and meeting our allies in the hospital and the folks in the hospital that we work with that help make referrals of families to us. And we'd done all our meetings at Duke, and then we are meeting everybody at UNC. And it just so happened that on the calendar, the last guy that we met at UNC was the attending in the Nick. Actually, no, he wasn't attending. Maybe he was. Anyway, he was at the time was the head of the neonatal intensive care unit at UNC Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
A guy by the name of Wayne Price, not very kind of a diminutive guy, relatively soft spoken, but something about him kind of grabbed me. You ever been around those people where they just
Oh,
kind of
absolutely.
something about their
Right.
presence just gets a hold of you.
Right.
And I remember just being kind of just impressed or at least drawn to Dr. Price. Well, that would have been in early February. Less than 2 months later, I was sitting in a consult as a parent with that same doctor because we had just found out that my son was going to be born with spina bifida, and we would likely spend a great deal of time in that same neonatal intensive care unit.
Wow.
And that was a point of my life where me fine went from something that was a very deep passion of mine to something that became very personal.
Real. Right.
Exactly. And it was because we were going to kind of be walking down those same paths of the families that me fine serves. I'm incredibly lucky and incredibly blessed that we haven't had some of the economic trials and turmoil that a lot of these families see, but emotionally, been there.
Wow.
um, Spiritually, psychologically,
Yeah.
been there. I,
Yeah.
I I know what it's like. So it's one of those things where I get a little bit of personal, I guess, personal account balancing, knowing that what we've had to go through, I'm also a part of a larger mechanism
Mhm.
that is helping families go through that same thing.
Yeah.
And again, that's something else that I wish everybody could experience. Like I wish everybody could feel what it's like to have something that you do and spend a lot of time and energy at feel like it's helping equalize things in your own life. It's a really really amazing feeling. I don't take that for granted at all.
Well, so three things that I just took out of what you said, and it's funny because they all three mold together with the things that we've talked about so far. I was wondering if, and I didn't want to mention it because there's, you follow a lot of people on Twitter, and sometimes you get wires crossed. But I do think I remember. Well, I do remember for sure now that you mentioned it that watching, because you tweeted some of those challenges that you all were going through, and I remember, praying for you all personally,
Thank you.
and watching you walk through that, and then you being connected to the foundation. So I'm so glad to hear the backstory, because I didn't know if one drew to the other or the other drew to the one, or they just, it sounds like they just happened to happen together at the same time. But
And you can
again,
think
those
that,
three
but
things.
I'm not naive enough to think that there wasn't some divine intervention there.
Absolutely. Right. Right. Yeah. And so Twitter, me fine, and your own family personal story, all those three came together. And I remember that on Twitter.
Mm,
And I remember you sharing some of that on Twitter. And I'm an empath, right? So when my Twitter feed, and I keep pruning and refining it, because
we all do.
because
Yeah.
honestly, there's people that I just don't need in my life,
Yep.
especially because I am an empath. But when I see somebody I've never met before, like you, and I follow your tweets and I laugh and I enjoy like we said earlier, I enjoy that. And there's people that some of them are lifeblood for me because it's Carolina and you guys are there, and
Hmm.
and there's some of that, but then there's the personal side, right? We all share some things. Some people share some
We're all
personal
humans,
things
man.
on Twitter,
Yeah.
and so I'm an empath, so I feel that, and I felt that for your family. So it's a powerful story. And the other thing I would tell you is, based on, you said your graduation date, I think I'm about 10 miles down the road further than
Yeah. All
I'm
right.
about. I'm about 10 exits or so further down the road. And what I would tell you in that those 10 exits difference between us is, I've probably learned, your career, man, you can make all the money in the world, but if you're not fulfilled, and it sounds like you just said that, who cares? Because
It doesn't matter.
honestly, 10 exits down the road, it still looks like it did back there, and you're still not going to be happy. But to wake up with purpose every day, it doesn't matter who you work for. I've had some great jobs and I've worked for some
Hmm.
really cool things, but if I wasn't fulfilled, and if I felt like the purpose that I thought I signed up for and what I got are not the same, then it wasn't worth it. And so I've been called the king of restless, and I've mentioned this on multiple podcasts, but
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm restless. I want to be fulfilled like you are. I want my life to mean something. And like you said, I'm not guaranteed tomorrow morning. So if I don't wake up one day, my kids are older,
Yeah.
one in college, one going to be in college next year, and one 2 years behind her. But if I don't wake up one morning, I want this podcast. I want the blog I used to
Yeah.
have that
Yeah.
this podcast resides on. I want my friends and the people I knew to tell them the story, if they don't remember it,
Yeah.
that my life meant something. And so you're doing that, man. That's awesome.
I appreciate you saying that. It's two things that I've heard of the last 10 years or so come to mind. One was right before I made my career switch, and I don't think it hit me with the magnitude that it stuck with me, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
powerful then, but I didn't realize it was gonna be something that I'd stuck with and repeated 10, 12 years later.
Yeah.
um I used to be on the programs committee for the Raleigh Young Professionals Network, and I was the chair of that committee for a while. And we put the programs together for this huge network of young people trying to get out in the business world and crush it, and
Right.
And one of our speakers one time, a guy by the name of Keith Pegues, he said, "You keep thinking about climbing this ladder and climbing this ladder and climbing this ladder, but what if your ladder's up against the wrong wall?"
Right.
Right? It's not that you're on the wrong
Ooh,
ladder. It's
that's
not that you're
good.
climbing the wrong way. It's that your ladder's against the wrong wall.
Man, that's good. That's so
And I,
good.
and it's that was
So
something that
good.
the older I've got, it's really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And I was on a podcast with a guy a while back. It was probably a couple of years ago, and he's really a fan of nonprofit work and work in the social sector. And when I was kind of telling my story to him, his thing to me was, he's like, "Oh, well, you're doing epitaph work."
Right.
And that's exactly what, if we go back to what I was feeling, 9 years ago, I was feeling like, what is my epitaph work?
Right.
What is the work that's going to be said about me after I'm dead, whether it's on my tombstone or otherwise? Um, and I think that's one of the things I wish for everybody, is that they had a chance to do epitaph work.
Yeah. Because I think we get caught in the cycle, right? You get caught in, I bought a house, I bought a car, I have a kids, or one kid or kids.
Hmm.
They need this. I'm in the college mode now, so I got to pay for
Hmm.
college. I got
Oh yeah.
this, and we get in the mode, and before we know it, I think we quickly look back and we've lost 10, 20 years of our life, and we've paid for all the stuff we needed to pay for, but man, we were miserable, and I think that it's so funny. I had somebody on last night that I'm going to post on Friday, that talked about the same thing. I think everybody's in that mode of, especially with COVID and everything else, I think it's brought
Bingo.
our mortality and our, we think we're invincible and we're not, and I think it, when that hits, whether it's close directly or a close friend or a family
Hmm.
member, we're quickly faced with the reality of, am I where I want to be, and am I doing what I want to do?
Yeah.
And I love that you're doing that, man. I really do, and I have. That's why I want to have you on. That's why I kept bugging you on direct message.
Oh,
was
you weren't
and I,
bugging me, man. I'm
and
just
I told
again,
Rel,
I was trying
you
to
got to get
ease back
on.
into Twitter. I was trying to just kindly step back in and make sure the water was all right. It wasn't that I was dodging you, I promise. It was more of like, am I
well,
going to look at it today? No, maybe. All right.
Well, Carolina Twitter is better with you in it.
Thank you.
And the
I
same
hope
with
so.
Rel, man. Two great guys. And sometime I'd love to just sit down with the two of you and just have a great time down in Chapel Hill somewhere. But man, I appreciate the work you do with Me Fine. So you mentioned this already, but again, I don't know where this lands. I never know where this lands, and I
Yeah.
never promise where it's going to land. But who knows? And if somebody hears this and they want to contribute or do something to help Me Fine, how do they do that?
Well, and you make a great point. Whether it's Me Fine or anything around them, just help organizations that are doing
Something,
the work. Right.
right?
That's the biggest thing, is that our sector does the work that nobody else wants to do or will
Yeah,
spend the resources to do.
yeah.
So if they feel called to help our work, I will say, we work just with the three hospitals in North Carolina. So I don't want anybody to feel like, we would be helping Cincinnati Children's or Nationwide or
Ohio
anything like
State,
that.
right, right,
Right.
right.
But there probably are organizations like that in that community.
Yeah,
Our website is mefinefoundation.org.
right.
On Facebook, it's at MeFine Foundation. On Twitter, it's at MeFineNC. I think it's the same for the gram. Just we're honestly a check writing organization. Money goes in for us to operate, and we put money right back in the hands of these families, whether it's paying their electric bills, or in the form of gas cards, or gift cards, they can go buy groceries, that kind of stuff. But even if MeFine doesn't speak to you, I would challenge anybody who is hearing our voices today, take a second, give to something that you feel passionate about, because
100%.
I
Yep.
guarantee you there's an organization in the social sector that could use that donation, and honestly could use your network. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just, if Steve in Akron is hearing this, Steve needs to know that there's an organization in Akron that really value his dollar, but also will value the fact that he is aware of them and will hopefully tell his network about that organization. So it's,
Absolutely.
just whoever's listening, man, just go do something for an organization around you that you feel called to help.
And I think we're seeing it with our buddy, like he's our friend. Maybe he's your friend. He's not mine. But Portnoy, right? I mean, you're seeing the power of someone with
Yeah.
influence
Yep.
what he can do. And right
It
now,
matters.
I've lost track of how much that guy's pulled in for small businesses. But man, as someone that's in a small business, I appreciate how that guy's saving the lives of
It
small
matters.
businesses right now. It's
It,
huge.
it absolutely matters.
And it's
And
nothing
that's
more than him making some phone calls and some tweets. I mean, it
bing.
really is that simple, right?
Done. And
It's
that's all.
amazing.
It's all, just that's where, like I said earlier, don't go start a nonprofit. Help these organizations that are already in existence, whether it's
Yep.
for profit or otherwise. I mean,
Right.
just help the people that already have the mechanism, the infrastructure, and help them to do what they're doing, whether that's you giving your time or your hours or your money.
Right. Well, man, this has been awesome. Do you want to talk a little hoops?
Well,
Or no?
we established online that we
We're not
weren't
going to
going
talk
to
about.
talk. We're not going
No.
to talk about I'm not going to talk about that which shall not be mentioned.
All
I'm
right.
happy to, man. I'm always down to talk Tar Heels anytime and any place, regardless of sport or location.
Well, you're my eyes and ears there. I've had Adam Lucas on, which was a huge honor for me.
Yeah,
That guy is amazing. He's absolutely
yeah.
amazing. Having
Speaking of
Rel on,
jobs we
having
all
you
want,
on.
right?
Say again.
Speaking of jobs we all want, right? Like
Right.
I think Adam's got a sweet gig, and he does a great job at it too.
And that's it. He's so good at it.
And
So
same with Sherelle. God, I wish I was a quarter of the writer that Sherelle or Adam are. Both those guys are just phenomenal writers. And my degree was in media production and communications, but I didn't go to the J school, so maybe that was the problem. Is like if I'd actually gone to journalism school, I'd be a much more polished writer than I am.
well, all three of you guys have been my eyes and ears. Adam, and I told him on his podcast. I mean, when I was a terrible student, and so I learned how to write between him and Max Lucado.
Yeah.
They taught me how to write, and I actually had a kind of good run with a blog for a long time, based on my following those two guys. They just have a way with words, and I learned a lot from them. But all right, we won't talk about Tuesday night, but let's just talk in overarching
generalities,
whatever the word is. Right. My guess is, and you're there, you're closer to this than I am. So like, if you ask me a Buckeye question, I could probably answer it because I'm inundated with it.
Right.
And you could probably see the eye roll as I said it.
All right.
Anyway.
It's just straight at real talk. How did Justin Fields not have his spleen ruptured the other night?
Yeah, that was bad. You know what though? I didn't think it was targeting.
I don't know that it was. I don't know if it was targeting. I don't think it was targeting. I think the kid got hurt by a really, really rough hit.
Yeah.
And I think they legislated based on him being hurt.
Right.
And I'm glad that he's not hurt. Like I'm glad he's
Right.
going to play because when you see a title game, you want to see everybody at full strength, right?
Absolutely.
So
Right.
No, and I never want to see anybody get hurt. But I was just
Right.
like I've seen. I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, so I know you have seen some bad football. But I've seen a lot of awful football. And when Chris Sims was quarterback for the Bucks, he got hit in one game, and I can't remember who hit him. I think it might have been Julius Peppers for the Panthers, but hit him in almost in the same place that that Justin Fields got hit, and it ruptured his spleen.
Wow.
Like yeah, so I saw that. I'm like, God, I hope Fields didn't have his spleen rupture. So I'm amazed that kid is not did not have some internal abdominal cavity issues, but
Right.
glad to hear it.
Who knows? Because they're not talking about it, which is very interesting. Right. But I know. So if again we started talking Tar Heels, so I probably lost a quarter of anybody that was listening. I'm going to lose the other 3 quarters now from Columbus because I don't think it was targeting. I thought when I back in the day when you were taught to play football, you were taught to tackle shoulder, pinch your head.
It was a textbook tackle. Yeah.
I saw that guy shoulder, pinch his head. That's me. I'm not a Buckeye hater. I don't really care. I didn't have a skin in the game. I'm just saying it wasn't targeting.
No, it was a textbook tackle. It just so happened, like I said, that
it was just hard.
They saw a kid get hurt really badly by a really rough hit.
Yeah.
And now that targeting is a thing, that's the first thing I want to do is try to legislate towards the aftermath as opposed to legislating towards the action. And I still say that I don't know that 70% of college officials know the definition of targeting anyway.
Right.
It's
right.
It's absurd.
That's why we got to go to review.
It's absolutely absurd.
That's right. All right. So we're not going to talk about Tuesday night, but we're overarching. Here's my take from a whole lot of years of watching Carolina basketball and a whole lot of years of watching Roy. I think Roy is right now. He opened up 5 jobs, and he said, "Who wants one?" And he's rotating all the. He's got more horses. Last year was a train wreck. Everybody was hurt. He didn't have the bodies to play. Right. This year, he's got some toys in the chest, and he's just trying to figure out how do they mesh? And in my opinion, the first couple games, I think he put it on paper and he said, all right, let's roll with these 5.
Mm-hmm.
Those 5 weren't getting it done, and he ain't going through another season this way. And so I think he has said, all right, maybe not verbally, but in his mind, what I see Roy Williams doing is saying, okay, I got 5 positions. Who wants it?
Yeah.
He's rotate. If he's given Puff Johnson a minute or 2 minutes here or there,
right.
What Kerwin Walton did to go in there, and Kerwin Walton said, you know what, that job's open, I'm taking it. And he took it. And it's his the rest of the year. Same with Sharp. Leakey, of all people, I believe, has now stepped forward and said, I'm taking that job.
Responded well.
So now we got 3 out of 5. Okay. I think Baycott was playing fantastic beginning of the year. I don't know what's happened the last few games. I don't know where Brooks is. I think it's time to worry about Brooks. Couple of games. And you got to get a point guard. I mean, I'm at the point where put KJ in, because I don't need somebody that can score 50. I need somebody that can now turn the ball over.
Yeah. At this point, you can help us by not hurting us.
Right. And just hey, KJ, just go in there.
I could see that.
Don't turn the ball over. Be to a Tampa Bay reference. Be who's the guy that won the Super Bowl?
Brad Johnson,
or even Trent Dilfer. You don't have to throw for 500 yards. Just don't turn the ball over.
Don't turn it over. Get it to your right. So here's I'll take your analogy a little bit further.
Okay.
Roy has got a lot of really fancy Italian car parts right now.
Yes.
The problem is he tried to put them all together, and some were Maserati, some were Lamborghini, some were Ferrari or whatever. So I will say, for all the knocks on Roy, and coaches are stubborn, Roy might be even in the longer spectrum of being stubborn. I mean, that's through his own admissions, right? But for all the knocks on him about that, you cannot say that he's not tinkering with things
right now, more than ever.
Typically, and Rel and I actually talked about this recently on the Coast to Coast podcast on InsideCarolina.com. Plug. We were recently discussing the fact that he's not, when you see these types of lineup changes from Roy, it's usually one guy.
Right.
He swapped out 3 dudes, which is the biggest like home run swing, to rip off another sports analogy. That's the biggest home run swing I think he's ever taken. I mean, you'll see him do, sub in 5 for 5, like the hockey line change, and bring the blue team in during a game.
Yep.
This is a different animal. And this is the type of thing that I don't know that he's ever done before. I know he hasn't done it at Carolina. And so for the folks that say he's not, it's the coach's fault. And that's not me being an apologist, right? Like, that's just, I think some of it you got to lay at the feet of the players. And I do think, so this is where I'll probably get accused of being a Pollyanna. And folks that know me, like during the course of the game, I used to be really, really pessimistic, but I still think that this team has the tools, going with the car parts reference. You got to get all of them for the same car together. And I think this team has the tools. Typically Roy's teams underperform early in the year, and he tinkers and adjusts. And by the end of the year, they're a finely tuned machine.
Right.
Well, they're on that same trajectory now. Like he is the king of, I'm going to let y'all figure this out, even if we lose to, Sally DeVry Tech Junior College of Light. Right. The problem is this year you started the season later. You have 10 less games. You didn't have, and for UNC, this is uniquely important. You didn't have the summer of running scrimmages twice a day with the pro guys.
Right.
Because of COVID. I'm not making excuses, because everybody, I said the other day on our
just as bad.
Everybody's terrible. Like, aside from Gonzaga right now, I think everybody in college basketball is bad.
100%. Throw the top 25 out, because it's not going to look, to your point, and I think this is where you're going.
Yeah.
Top 25 today will not look like it does at the end of the season.
It doesn't look now like it did 3 weeks ago.
Right.
I mean,
the Big Ten is, and I just said this to a Duke fan today. I actually work with somebody that went to Duke.
I'm sorry. That's unfortunate.
We make it work. But I told him, because he was asking if I watched the Duke game last night, and I'm like, yeah, man, they don't look good at all. But I said,
and they won, but they don't look good at all.
But they won, but they're a mess too. Kentucky's a train wreck, but they've won 2 in a row. Carolina's won 2 in a row. Duke is now 2-0 in the ACC. Like, before I'm not worried about it, but what you see in the Big Ten, because everybody's making a big deal out of, 9 teams in the, ranked. Who cares? Welcome to the ACC. I was watching some game over the weekend of Ohio, or it wasn't Ohio State, it was somebody, and they were showing it might be, I think it was Ohio State. they're talking about, look at the schedule coming up. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to the ACC. Like, okay, so cool. You're playing some people that are ranked. Good Lord. Like, that's every year in the ACC.
Yeah.
And you're like,
I'll,
so everybody's really excited about the Big Ten. But I think the Big Ten is a bunch of, to your point, they're seniors and they're upperclassmen.
that matters. That matters.
So they came out of the gate really strong, but they're at their ceiling. Those teams are not going to get any better than they are today. Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, Notre Dame, Michigan State. There's teams now that are at the bottom that by the end you're proven and true. And I'm with you. Last year, but I think a lot of people are last year hurt a lot of people because we're very spoiled.
Sure.
So everybody's like real nervous, but I'm telling you, it is frustrating to watch.
Oh, it's watching. So I actually, my fandom was, it's weird. My fandom and love for Carolina basketball, a lot of it came from my grandmother, who she just passed last year, but her reverence for Dean Smith, and I've heard you talk about, not the Dean, Smith, Dean Smith, her reverence for him and the way she spoke about him.
Yeah.
Like watching this team right now, if cancer hadn't taken her, this season would have, right? Like it's just watching this team turn the ball over so much is what's so frustrating. But to go back to, again, bring it full circle, and maybe we can bring back that other 75% of your audience. If you look at the teams that are excelling right now, specifically the ones in the Big Ten and Texas and a couple other ones, the teams with veteran guards,
they've been
there playing well because they're not turning the ball over.
Right.
That even the teams right now who are good, if they've got young guards, their turnovers are through the freaking roof. Right. Well, North Carolina has neither of those. They have young guards and they're still trying to round into form. So they've got the turnovers and they don't have they lack the veteran leadership at the perimeter.
Yeah.
Guide them. Yep. So I do think this season will improve. I do think they'll, I told some friends of mine probably back in, I guess early November, I said that the national champion this year is going to be something, because of COVID and because of just the way the game's going to turn out. The national champion this year is going to be like 16-6. Like that's gonna, their record's going to be something stupid. They're not going to have a ton of wins.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And they're probably going to have one or two just brutal losses.
Yeah.
And, save for Gonzaga, I just don't think anybody in college basketball right now is any good because everything's been so disrupted.
Right.
And even the young kids, teams that rely on young kids, Duke, Kentucky, etc., they're struggling because the young kids just haven't had the normal prototypical chain of progression that they have when they come on a college campus.
Yep. Agreed 100%. So that's 100% what I think when I look at this team. I get so irritated. I was so irritated, especially just a simple entry pass. Like I'm telling you, and I noticed it in the game. I know we're not going to talk about the game Tuesday night, but in the game Tuesday night, in the second half, and I have a feeling if I was a fly on the wall in the locker room at halftime, Roy said, if you guys make one more lollipop lob entry pass, I'm going to cut you from this team. Because in the second half, they were very, very intentional about
decisive
bounce passes, right?
Yeah.
And I think the AAU stuff that worked in AAU because everybody plays zone, nobody cares. So you just throw that lob pass. It doesn't work at this level anymore, and that's what's killing those two guards because we rely on the bigs. You got to get the ball to the bigs. I'm on the team, but you gotta get the ball. And now I'm coaching, but I watch these games and I just want to throw my shoe through the TV because it's like it's so simple, and that's the beauty of it. It's simple. It's all fixable.
That's also the thing where I think the coaching staff is in the same boat you are.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you see things like a 3-player swap in the starting lineup. I think that's why you see, Roy typically is one to have a longer bench than most. And I think that's one of the things right now too that's actually hurting this team is they're it's hard for him he's got so many Italian car parts that he doesn't know exactly which ones fit with what, but he wants to give them all a fair shot to be of impact.
Right.
And so the flip side of that is you keep moving, you'll platoon some guys in there, and then you got a guy who was on fire, like Baycott was against Georgia Tech, or like Sharp was the other night. You got to pull them because you want to give these other guys a chance. So it's a combination of or an amalgamation of just crap. And I think he's trying to work with it, but his frustration, I guarantee you, sounds just like ours. It's probably just on 100%. Steroids. But I think we're pointing out trust me, we're pointing out the same stuff that they see that they're drilling in practice right now.
And I said that to my son watching the game Tuesday night. Is I look, you could see Roy. I mean, he sits back and he just,
What can he say?
yeah,
He's
yeah,
told them, like, at
yeah.
some point they got to just do
Got
it,
to do
right?
it, right? It's on the players,
Yep.
100%. All right. Well, we could talk all day, Carolina, and I would love to do that again. And maybe we'll revisit it back in March. And I think we should get me, you, and Rel on in March and talk about, because hopefully we're going to be making a nice run. But I agree. I don't know anybody's going to touch Gonzaga. They're really good. They're
They're good and they're
2009
old,
Carolina
right?
good.
Yeah, no, they're
2009
absolutely.
Carolina good.
They're good. They're old. I think they're probably going to buzzsaw a lot of teams in the tournament. I mean, they usually have one or two hiccups because they play that West Coast Conference schedule, but I don't even know. Maybe Baylor. I don't even know who could defend them right now because
Right.
the defense of college basketball has been bad. So I'm like you. If there's ever been a year for Mark for you to get one, I think this is it.
I hope so. The guy, he's a
He's
good
a good dude.
He's a good coach, and I'm glad he didn't get one a few years ago.
This is true.
But,
Yeah,
yeah,
get it whenever you want. Just don't get it when you're at
started
the
playing
expense of
Carolina.
right when you're at the
I
expense
wish
of the
Jay
Tar
Wright
Heels.
wouldn't have got one a few years ago, but that's fine. This is fine. All right. So, all right, man, this has been awesome. I don't want to take a ton of your time. I know I appreciate so much you coming on. This has been a lot of fun. And I hopefully, if anybody, hasn't logged off or is, quit listening because of the Carolina talk, they really do hear the passion that you have for Me Fine, and in a way I have, for any foundation. But that one is close to you, and as a guest of mine, it's close to me now. So
Thank you.
anything I can do to support or help Me Fine, please let me know. But anybody listening, please look into it. Let's just do what we can to help each other, because the world's on fire, as we saw yesterday. Just a
Yeah.
crazy time, but we can still. It doesn't mean we can't still help great people doing great things like what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, I consider myself lucky, fortunate, and blessed to be able to do what I do, and it doesn't happen without people like you caring about our work, and the investors that we have that invest in our work in the community, and the people that want us to continue to strengthen those around us. It doesn't happen without that, and yeah, just anybody, if there's anybody listening that that's kind of on the fence about doing something more meaningful in their life, just I'd strongly encourage them to follow it, take that leap of faith. And you know what? If it doesn't work, just dust yourself off and try it again. I mean, it's
Yeah,
we only got one time on this planet, and
absolutely.
at indefinite times around the sun, but we got to figure it out while we're here. And yeah, and if anybody else is listening, to Tar Heel fans that don't know, be sure to check out Inside Carolina
Yes.
Live every
Yes.
Saturday
Thank you.
morning at
Yeah.
10 o'clock Eastern on chapelboro.com or WCHL 97.9 The Hill in Chapel Hill. You can see that advertised on Inside Carolina, but been lucky enough to be a part of that with Tommy Ashley, and really love hosting that show. So yeah, I appreciate you giving us a chance and a platform to talk about all the stuff that's so close and dear to me.
Yeah. And I totally forgot. I'm sorry. Welcome to Unscripted. That's the part
We've
of
been
the
busy,
template.
man. It's all right.
If I had a notes, I would have remembered. But and normally sometimes I do, right, but that's unscripted. So please talk about that. You are on Inside Carolina podcast, and we are thankful for. And the other one, it's Coast to Coast. So tell me that too. Let's give that the
Oh
time.
yeah, yeah.
Let's talk about your podcast and all you're doing down there, because and I thank you for bringing it up. I'm so
No
sorry.
worries. Um, yeah, so InsideCarolina.com. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. I am lucky enough, used to be a subscriber when they first got started, or was a subscriber when they first got started, and was still, a big time consumer of their content. I host a couple of different podcasts for them. The one we're doing right now is called Coast to Coast. I host one called The Throwback during the off season, which you look at old Tar Heel games and kind of go back to win. And then we also do one called The Backstory, which is a little bit kind of like Paul Harvey meets sports, which is kind
That's
of my
awesome.
yeah, it was kind of my take there. And then also every Saturday during football season, it's more of a football pregame show, 2 hours before or 3 hours before kickoff. But during basketball season, we go back to 10 a.m. We do 2 hours every Saturday morning. So I hope folks will come spend their 10 a.m. to 12 noon with us talking Tar Heels.
And I think can you get that on tune in? Because
Yep.
if I'm, because again, this is
You can tell
wherever
your yeah,
Buckeye
tell
fans.
your tell your whatever Alexa, Siri, whomever your virtual
Your AI
sweetheart
is.
is, tell them to play 97.9 The Hill, or yeah, it's on TuneIn, it's WCHL, or you can stream it at their website. It's Chapelboro, CHAPELBORO.com.
And I'm gonna put all these links in this post when I put it all together,
Heck
just in
yes.
case anybody doesn't do it. But can we find the podcasts on all the normal podcast channels?
Yep, just a search all the Inside Carolina podcasts for not only just ours, but there's some other ones. There's On the Beat, which is a weekly review of media. We have a lot. Just there's a ton of Inside Carolina content coming out. There's a reason that Inside Carolina is the number one college fan site on the 24/7 network. But we put a ton of content out, and if you want any of those UNC themed podcasts, yeah, go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your pods from. Just search Inside Carolina and it'll show up.
Awesome, man. Thank you. This has been fun, and it's nothing more than it's nothing else than I thought it would be, and that's a compliment because there's a lot of people on social media that aren't who they think propose to be or act like they are, and I appreciate you. I appreciate all you do, and I appreciate what you do for us Heels fans not in that area that keep us up to date, and I look forward to just staying online and keeping in touch.
Well, I appreciate it, AC, and thank you for having me, and thanks for using this platform to allow people to tell their stories, and allow folks to share how they can get the most out of their time on this planet. And you're doing a good thing too. So don't forget to shed some light on that, and make sure you're giving yourself some grace every day.
I appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon. All right.
All right, man.
Go
We'll see you.
Heels. Go
Take care. Go
Heels.
Heels. Yeah.
See ya.